We have a very old, aging building infrastructure in the United States. Typically with building improvements, you can take advantage of these long-term fixed rate that can improve your building, no out-of-pocket costs, and then it's going to put money into your pocket.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. Hello and welcome to episode 234. One of the best ways to increase your net operating income and cash flow is to get control over your utility expenses. Whether it's through improving your existing systems and mechanicals, adding renewable sources such as solar panels, or installing water-saving aerators to your faucets, there are many ways you can improve the energy efficiency of your properties. However, this does require an investment of time and money. If you don't have the funds to make this investment, you may be missing out on a huge profit opportunity. Today, we're going to be discussing some of the energy efficient changes you can make to your investment property and the different types of loans available that will cover the costs. With us today is Scott Ringlein, the founder and CEO of the Energy Alliance Group of North America, whose mission is to develop and deploy innovative solutions to energy, waste, and environmental challenges through the combination of technical and financial solutions. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. I'm glad to be here.
What are some of the low-hanging fruit items that you can just tell us right off the bat that will help people save money through saving on their utility costs?
Yeah, so first and foremost is getting the building envelope sealed up. I know windows are not things that are readily affordable. So, during the winter months, looking at somehow sealing them up either from the inside or the outside, making sure there's proper caulking and stuff like that. Also, just doing a general walk around the building and look for, areas where air can get in. It could be a hole or maybe some missing caulking. And then from there, on the inside, first and foremost, lighting. And then simple lighting controls, even, dimmers and motion detectors. One of the things that LED brings with dimming is that when you dim them, you're actually reducing the amount of power that goes to them, where the old dimmers and old technology, the power itself did not change. You were still feeding it the same amount of power. You're just getting less light out.
So let me be clear on that. So when you dim an incandescent bulb, which is the old type of light bulb, the same amount of power was being used no matter what the level was.
That's correct.
With LED, you're actually lowering the amount of power being used as you dim the bulb.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. Just from starting out, in most applications, you're already reducing the amount of energy by 50 to 70% by going to LED. So it's in typical applications, you're going to get a 50% reduction on the new light. But then in typical applications, when you're using dimming and motion detectors, it's, about another 30% savings. So a lot of savings. And then don't forget about the reduction in maintenance cost, especially for your listeners that have, apartments and common areas. You got to pay somebody to get the ladder, go up there, change the bulb or the fixture. When you go to LED, now you're increasing the life that bulb will last, sometimes 200 or 300% longer. And that's just going to reduce your overall cost over the life of the lighting. From the lighting standpoint, kind of some of the next steps are, changing filters, making sure you do your annual or your biannual maintenance. The schedule that we typically follow is, prior to the heating season, make sure that you get your furnace looked at and everything's working properly. And then prior to the cooling system, same thing on the cooling system. And then from there, looking at even your hot water heater systems. If you got a really, really old hot water heater system, there's far more efficient systems that are out there, even going to on demand, but are certainly more expensive to do. But that's something to look at. And then from there, starting to look at where you're going to put more of your investment. But even start with the simple stuff: a leak, a water leak. Faucet dripping over a day period. You're actually using gallons of water, or maybe a toilet that you can hear leaking. Same thing, and you're paying for it twice. You're paying for it once to get the water in, and then you're paying for it the second time because they're charging you on the sewer side. So it's very expensive to pay for a drip. So there's some really, quick and easy things to look at right away to, start reducing your utility costs.
When you talk about reducing utility costs, what are some of the typical savings you might see by following the advice you just gave?
So certainly on the building envelope side, without getting into, window replacements, that's typically around a 10% reduction in like your heating and cooling cost. Lighting is certainly significant. In most applications, it's going to be a 50% reduction. When you get into larger facilities, so apartment buildings, then you might see 70%, especially on outdoor lighting where you have 500 and 1,000 watt light bulbs out there that are either metal halide or high pressure sodium. Then in the water application, it really depends. The drip, certainly you're going to see a reduction, 5 or 10%. But one thing that we do notice is that a lot of the older buildings out there have toilets that are flushing. We've seen some 4 gallons of flush, and today on a traditional flush toilet, they're at 1 or 1.2 gallons per flush. Or, if you have shared bathrooms, certainly going to no flush urinals, you're saving just an amazing amount of water that way. So, in some applications, it could be a 50 to 60% reduction in water usage.
That's pretty substantial. Now, I know that with my multifamily and apartment properties, I have taken advantage of some programs that are offered out there where, in many cases, I was able to replace all of my incandescent bulbs, especially on the interior of the units and the hallways and everything, and have the entire cost covered. Can you talk about any of those types of programs?
Yeah. So the first thing is, we're talking in the state of Michigan, so we're very familiar with utilities here, but we can speak in general in most states. All of your listeners, whether they own a business or they just own their own home, are actually putting money into a fund on the utility side to improve efficiency. So there's a line item on your utility bill, so pull it out and take a look. And what that does is it gives you access to services like you talked about, Brian, where the utilities will actually come in at no cost and do an audit of your building, give you an idea of some of the, as we talked about, low-hanging fruit improvements, and in some cases, actually provide free upgrades. It might be insulation on your cold and hot water lines from your hot water heater that are exposed, or as you referred to, changing out some of your light bulbs. But then it also goes further from that, is that there are ways that you can get a more complex audit for free. And more importantly, is if you move forward with some of these larger improvements, there's cash available through your utilities. It's an incentive. And there's basically a catalog of all the different ones that you could qualify for. Even replacing appliances and upgrading to Energy Star appliances, there are monies out there to help offset some of those costs.
And how do our listeners get access to that money? Would they just check with their utility companies, or is there a better way to do it?
From like a single family residential, there's two ways. One, they can reach out to their utilities, and you could type in at the browser at the utility, just incentives or energy efficiency incentives, and you'll be able to find out how you do that. Typically, it's an application, and there's certain approvals. You have to show proof of purchase and installation. But more importantly is that, like our company, we're a trade ally partner for the utilities, and there's lots of trade ally partners. Say you need a new furnace, or say you want an audit. There are lists of these types of contractors that are out there. They have to be pre-qualified by the utilities, and they would handle all of the incentives on your behalf, and then the check is presented to the customer. So, first and foremost, take action, actually engage with your utilities. I know it sounds crazy that they have programs where they're trying to reduce the amount of energy that you use, but keep in mind, it's a lot cheaper for them to do that than to build a whole new power plant. And that's really the whole purpose of the program, is to reduce the amount of load that they have, especially on a hot summer day when everybody's got their air conditioning going. So they don't have to come out and say, hey, we need you to, turn it down or turn it off because we can't keep up with the power.
That's an important point you just made. And I'll tell you and our listeners, with the properties that I have, I've probably received close to $70,000, $80,000 in free benefits from these types of programs, whether it be LED lights or steam valves for our hot water radiators, or traps.
Steam traps, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, steam traps, thank you. It's just the programs that are out there can really save you a lot of money. So it's definitely worth looking into.
The thing is, it's your money. This isn't a handout from them. You're already paying them for it. And as we tell people, to reduce your energy costs, so any upgrade that you're going to do, it's your money also that you're going to use. Because today you're already paying it in your higher utility costs and your higher maintenance costs. What you want to do is you want to take that money that you're currently paying, put it towards more efficiency equipment and processes, and now you have a lower utility, you have a lower maintenance cost, you're putting a little money into your pocket, and you're still able to pay for the improvements.
Do you have a specific example of where you've seen someone do this or possibly help someone do this and the type of savings that they were able to realize?
Yeah, so we a couple of years ago, we did an apartment complex up in Saginaw, so north of the Detroit area. The facility was built back in 1923. It still had the original windows, original boiler system, all original lighting. And so, the first thing that we focused on was the building envelope. We replaced 231 windows. We were able to bring in the funding to do it, and we can talk about that separately. They qualified for some tax incentives, tax credits, and some utility incentives. And from day one, they had a return on investment north of 30%. And people would ask, well, that's crazy. It's just a window. Well, first of all, they were single pane, so we went to double pane windows. And then these windows were built in the 20s. So to do any maintenance on them was costing them a fortune, and the building was a historical building, so they couldn't just replace it with anything. And so they saw significant reductions, nearly 70% reduction just in maintenance, and then a 30% reduction in the utility costs from a heating and cooling standpoint.
That's great. That's fantastic. And I think this is a good opportunity to just talk about the Energy Alliance Group of North America, which is your organization. What exactly do you do? What's your function, and how do you help property owners?
That's the big thing, is helping them, bringing value to them with a focus on efficiency, conservation, and renewable energy measures. First and foremost, we're not coming in to sell a particular technology. We're agnostic to that. We don't rep anyone or wholesale anyone. We're really looking at the building as a whole and looking at what can we do to help you reduce your utility cost. But more importantly, we focus on the financial aspect of the transaction. It's easy to hire somebody to come in and do an audit. They can tell you, where you need the improvements. They can make recommendations in regards to the technology, but typically that's where the conversation stops. And while that's important to the owner, what's more important is, geez, hey, this is all great, but how can I pay for it? And so what we do, we take, our approach is what we call our 4 cores. And the 4 cores focuses on the financial, the technical, the incentives, and then everything else. It might be, tax strategies and stuff. There's a lot of funding out there to do these improvements. So we figure out, what's going to best fit with the owner and their situation. Then we'll assess the building and identify everything that could be done. And then we narrow it down to the things that need to be done versus what they want to be done. And then we match up any incentives that they qualify for. So we already touched on the utility incentives, but if they get into renewal, there's some federal tax credits out there. There's also ways to, increase your depreciation, accelerated depreciation. And then finally, on the tax side, especially for those that own, commercial industrial properties, there could be a tax credit for cost segregation, abandonment, R&M, all these other things that are out there that typically most owners don't know that they're out there. That's not their business to do. That's our business to do for them. And then we put it all together and manage the whole thing for them also. We're not going to just turn it over to them and say, okay, go find your GC and your subs to do it. We'll manage it, soup to nuts, and get them in a position where they're going to be, cash flow positive from day one. That's our target, and mitigate any financial risk that they could possibly have over a long period of time.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. That's quite a service. What's your service area? Are you just out of Michigan, or do you cover wider area?
We're nationwide. We're based in Michigan, so most of our projects are in Michigan, but currently we have projects in Massachusetts and Florida. So, it's a variety, and we're able to do it nationwide primarily because we're going to get involved with the local people to get the work done. And a lot of it is just the process that we bring to get it done. So we don't have to have people in every, state to do what we do.
And what do you typically charge for this type of service?
It really depends on if we're going to act as a consultant or if we're going to manage the whole thing. So it could run from, 2% of a project cost all the way up to, say, 5 or maybe even 10% of the project cost. But the point here is that we're going to manage everything for the owner rather than just come in and specify, hey, these are the things that you should do. Good luck, and give us a call when you're finished.
The important thing to me is you're managing, finding where that money is going to come from, whether it's going to be incentives that are out there through the utility companies or possibly some different financing solutions.
Yep. That is, as you're an owner, it's money, money, money. Statistically, it's pretty sad out there. 98% of these types of improvements never go forward because of the financial aspect. The solution's been out there for years. It's always been, I have to fit it in with a 1-year payback or a 2-year payback. Well, you're only going to do a few things when you're trying to, fit it into that type of financial model.
Well, let's talk about the financial solutions, because I'd imagine on a large apartment complex, you're looking at improvements that will run, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Historically, people might say, well, we'll refinance and pull money out to do that, or get a supplemental. But there are some other options. Do you mind telling us about what those are?
One of them that we want to talk about is new to the industry. Everybody refers it to as the PACE program, PACE, and that's an acronym for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And the program itself was started back in 2009 in California, but the preface is to improve building quality through efficiency, conservation, and renewable energy measures. The beauty of this program is that the funding mechanism has been around since the mid-1700s, and it's based on property tax assessments. And property tax assessments have been used to improve infrastructure throughout the United States and the world for, like I said, from the 1700s, to improve your roads, waterways, sidewalks, build libraries. And with property tax assessments, it's whoever is going to benefit from it is going to pay for it. So if you're on a road, they put in a new sewer system, they're going to place a property tax assessment on your property. You're going to pay for it during the time you own it. This program is the same exact structure, except now you're taking it voluntarily, saying, I want to take the assessment. So the way it works is that you can take on a tax assessment, basically borrow money against your property in the range of 20 to 30% of that value. And there's no personal guarantee. It's non-recourse because you're securing it with the property, not with the property owner. You can get 25-year fixed rates. It is a expense rather than a debt, because a tax is an expense, so your balance sheet looks better. And then more importantly is if you sell the property, or God forbid you default, it's just transferring over to the next owner. You're not on the hook for that debt. They're not going to come after you to pay that debt. And the next owner that takes it over, they're just responsible for making those annual payments, and all the improvements then are transferred with the property. So it's not like you're going to take them away if you sell the property. So this is certainly a go-to program, one of the first ones that we look at for these types of improvements, because it's dedicated to that.
And how does that PACE financing work if you already have, say, Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac type financing in place?
The one thing that they incorporated when the program was first introduced is you have to have consent. So if there's debt against the property, you have to get consent from whoever holds that note to place this tax assessment. Now, the beauty is that this assessment, it's going to get a first lien position. Well, guess what? Any tax does. So, if a lender says, well, I don't want to give up my first, lien position on the property, well, you already did, because any property tax, just general property tax, takes first lien position. The second thing is that while you're taking an assessment on, so say you own a building, it's worth $1 million, and you're going to do $200,000 worth of improvements that are going to come through this assessment. That lien is only for the payments due. So you go into default and it sits on the tax records for 5 years, and then it gets sold. It's just the back taxes. It's not the entire principal, where a debt is the entire principal. So you sell I have to find somebody that's going to pay off that debt, where a tax assessment through PACE, when you sell, the new owner is just taking over that tax, but then they benefit from the improvements. And that's the difference here. The other thing too is there's no out-of-pocket cost. It covers 100% of the cost, where you go into, pulling equity out, they're looking for you to put money out there too. It could be 20, 30, 40%. And that's the beauty of PACE, is it's structured so you don't use your own money to make these improvements.
That's an important point. So you don't have to have any money out of pocket to get at these funds.
That's right. And the other thing too that's important for everybody to understand is the way it's structured is that over the assessment period, so whether it's a 10 or a 25-year assessment period, it is structured so that you never take money out of your own pocket. The annual assessment payments, it should be that your reduction of utility costs and maintenance cost will offset that assessment cost. So you're actually putting money into your pocket from day one. And there's a lot of people out there that are going to question that, but it's about the time, not about the cost of the improvement. Typically with building improvements, whether it's lighting or HVAC, you're only going to be able to get terms of 3, 5, maybe 10 years. Where with PACE, the term is driven by the life of the improvement that's put in. So if I'm going to put a window in, that thing's going to last 25, 50 years, or solar, that's going to last 25, 50 years. You can take advantage of these long-term fixed rate PACE funds that can improve your building, no out-of-pocket costs, and then it's going to put money into your pocket, and it's going to make your building better. You might be able to get, more rent, better tenants, and from a marketing standpoint, promote that it's more efficient, or if you have renewables, that you have a sustainability program.
So in addition to PACE financing, what other types of loans are out there that people might be able to tap into?
Certainly there is no shortage of money out there. There's money that's not being used. So let's talk about the state of Michigan. The Michigan Energy Office, there are funds, grant matching funds that are available through there to do efficiency improvements. We just talked about the PACE program. A lot of states have state-based programs. In Michigan, it's called Michigan Saves. You can get, $250,000 for, 5 years, 7 years. Another program that's, gaining a lot of interest is through the USDA. This is a federal government, similar to like an SBA loan. The USDA is actually backing the loan. It allows you to secure funding for 20 to 25 years to do these types of improvements. There's more focus, of course, on rural, hence the USDA and the agriculture side. But it's very, very simple to see if you qualify. When you go out to the website, you physically type in your address, and it'll tell you whether or not you're in one of these funding zones. And then you take the next steps to learn about, what you qualify for in regards to those types of fundings. Additionally, when you get into larger purchases, especially for apartment complexes, say you're doing HVAC improvements, lighting or renewable, there's a lot of companies out there that are now offering, 15-year lease to own, power purchase agreements. And even on the lighting side, there's companies out there that are now funding it up front, and then they get paid out of the savings. I think something to point out here, though, is that most of those programs that we just referred to require some type of personal guarantee, where PACE does not. And that's why we talk about it a lot these days. It's something not everyone qualifies for, but it's worth looking into and taking the time to learn about it and see if you do qualify for it. Because it's as good as a grant because of how it's structured and the security of it.
So Scott, I'm curious about solar, because I know that's one of the things that you specialize in is solar energy. What can you tell us about that and the benefits it might have for rental property owners?
Brian, we're based in Michigan. The first thing that we hear is solar doesn't work in Michigan. We have a lot of cloudy days. It's winter. Well, first and foremost, the technology is advanced where on a cloudy day, you're still producing power. And because it is a thermal device, even when it snows, it's going to melt off. So, first of all, let's rule that out. It works in Michigan. The second thing is there are still tax credits out there. They're slowly being taken away, but they're out there, and everybody should be taking advantage of those. And the cost to produce power is now cheaper than what you can buy it from your utilities. So, that combination of the efficiency and the cost, it's time to really, really look at implementing solar into your portfolio of, rentals or buildings or anything like that.
How are you seeing solar being employed right now, and what kind of savings are people realizing?
On an industrial commercial standpoint, kind of the larger ones, seeing a lot more, of course, rooftop, ground mount, and then even, covered parking, because you want to utilize the space that you have there. In regards to a savings, you could typically see anywhere from a 20 to a 30% savings. The last one that we put in, their base cost was around 12.5 cents, and then the solar production energy cost was about 9 cents. And so, it's certainly a way to reduce your utility cost. The challenge is securing the funding to make sure that you're able to see these savings as soon as possible. No different than a window or a roof. These are capital intensive, but they last a very long time. And it's more of a challenge to get the type of funding so that it fits whatever financial model that you have. So typically we're seeing solar that's 7 or 10 or a 15-year funding mechanism for that. On the residential side, seeing a lot more rooftop. I think the challenges that everybody needs to be aware of is what are local zoning requirements? Or, do I face the right way? Do I have too many trees? Those are things that a solar installer or companies like us are going to come in, they're going to assess right away to make sure that you really fit well with the solar application before you start walking before you're running. That's for sure.
What about the potential for selling some of that solar power back to the utility company?
Wow, Brian, that's a challenging conversation right now in the state of Michigan. There are other states out there where the utilities have embraced it, and you're going to. I always tell our clients, don't put solar on or incorporate solar thinking that, I'm going to make money by selling it to the utilities. That's not the point. The point of solar is to reduce your cost. Now, on the days that you're producing more than what you're using, of course, you have to have an interconnection. And it would be nice to get paid by the utilities. In the state of Michigan, they're only paying about maybe 50% or less of what you're buying it for. So say you're buying it for 12 cents, they're only going to pay you 6 cents. The other challenges that we're facing here in the state is that there are caps that were put in place a very long time ago before solar really grew at the pace it is, that eventually we're going to reach this cap where you can no longer interconnect to the utility. They're saying, oh, we only want so much power. We're only going to pay for it. And once we reach that point, now the challenge is going to be, all right, you have solar, you're producing too much. What do you do with it? Now you have to figure out, okay, can I store it? So certainly it's out there. There is some type of cost recovery out there, but if you design it properly, you're not counting on the utility company to offset your cost of this investment. You want to use 100% of your power, put in some storage. There's lots of new companies out there that are doing battery storage on a small scale for, residential, all the way up to industrial commercial, of course. But you want to make sure that you're designing it so that you use it and not counting on trying to recover your costs through the utilities themselves.
Scott, one of the other things I wanted to make sure we touch on is water systems, pipes, plumbing, that type of thing. And I know we talked about controlling leaks. What are some of the other things that you see out there being done to help control plumbing costs? Because frankly, in Grand Rapids, most of these properties are pretty old, and plumbing is one of the number one expenses.
Yeah, and in Grand Rapids is not alone. Every large city is. We have a very old, aging building infrastructure in the United States. Statistically, I think 50% of all the buildings are 50 years old or more. So, it's old. And so the first point that you want to look at is, where are you using it? So, for instance, let's talk about your toilets. A lot of the old buildings out there are still using, 4-gallon per flush toilets, and you're paying for it twice. You're paying for it to come into your building, and then you're paying for it when you flush it. So, it's an expensive thing. Water costs are never going to go down. They will continue to go up. So that's the first place that you want to look at, is getting low flow flush toilets. Or if you have, urinals, go to no flush urinals, no water urinals. You have to maintain them. A lot of people say, well, don't they smell? Well, they're set up not to smell, but only if you maintain them. There's a filter in there that has to be replaced. You got to make sure that you put in the proper maintenance to do that. The other place to look at is hot water generation. We're big fans of incorporating on-demand hot water generation. And this isn't just for single-family residential. This could be apartment buildings. You're wasting a lot of money holding on to 50 or hundreds of gallons of water all day long. And typically the usage of it is morning, maybe some mid-afternoon during lunchtime, and then in the evenings. The rest of the time they sit idle. So that's certainly a place that you want to look at. The other place, especially for your listeners that own large-scale apartment complex, is we're seeing a lot more use of on-demand micro combined heat and power unit. So for your listeners, a combined heat and power unit is you're using natural gas to produce electricity, but then the waste of that process is heat. And now you can use the heat to produce hot water. It's not necessarily free, but in essence, it's the waste. You got waste heat, you got to do something with it. All right, let's make it into hot water. So now you have the benefit of generating power and producing hot water.
I don't know if I've seen that type of system before.
So you see it a lot in very, very large cities, New York City, California, stuff like that. The technology's been out there for a very long time. It's just the U.S. has not incorporated these technologies because it's, efficiency really has not been important for only in the last probably 10, 20 years. And as you know, when you introduce a new technology, even though it's been in place for, 10, 20, 50 years somewhere else, you bring it in, a lot of questions about, is it going to work? Is it really going to give me the savings? It's sort of like geothermal. We're big fans of geothermal. That is the most efficient way to heat and cool a building. But a lot of people will say, well, that's new technology, right? it's been around for 100 years. And so these are things that we bring, we're trying to bring as much value as we can to the owner to expose them to some of these variety of solutions that are out there. And again, not just the technical side, but the financial side, because you can't do one without the other. You have to have both of them together to actually move this forward and make it feasible to the owner, because in the end, the owner wants to do it to what? Improve cash flow. I want a higher return on investment. So while lots of people want to become more efficient, they're afraid to do so because they don't think that they can achieve the types of returns that they're trying to target.
Kind of sum everything up for us then, and what is the takeaway you want our listeners to have from this conversation?
Start looking at efficiency, conservation, and renewable energy measures. They can be done and bring a return on investment to you. Get educated. We're believers in self-educated, but don't be afraid to reach out to companies like ourselves or companies that are listed on your utility trade ally partners and get some help. Your business is to own and manage a facility, not understand how to get all this stuff paid for or what I should be doing. That's our job. So, actually take action, get started, and improve your buildings.
Great. And how would people get a hold of you, Scott, if they wanted to do so?
Our website is www.energyalliancegroup, all one word, .org, O-R-G. We have a contact page there. Send us an email, give us a call. We'll be sure to reach back out.
Scott, I really want to thank you for having this conversation with us, because I think there's just a lot of ways that we can control our costs and increase our net operating income by utilizing a lot of what you just told us about energy efficiency and the ideas that you just brought to the table. And plus, it's great for the environment, and it's great for our communities and our power plants and all across the board. So thank you so much for sharing this with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Brian, and good luck to all your listeners. I hope they take this all to heart and start improving their buildings.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.